Hello, friends. Hit Refresh is not just a book about turning a tech giant around. It's about reshaping mindsets, reigniting purpose, and rediscovering what it means to lead with empathy in a world driven by constant change. Through deeply personal stories, corporate crossroads, and global insights, book's author Satya Nadella takes us behind the scenes of Microsoft transformation and invites us to think bigger. Not just about innovation, but about our own capacity to adapt, empower, and make a difference. Whether you're a business leader, an entrepreneur, a curious learner, or someone navigating change in your own life, this book speaks to the heart of what truly matters: a growth mindset, a commitment to purpose, and the courage to hit refresh when it's time to evolve. Before we proceed, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 1: From Hyderabad to Redmond. How Karl Marx, a Sanskrit scholar and a cricket hero, shaped my boyhood. The opening chapter takes us back to Hyderabad, India, to the humble beginnings of a boy whose life was shaped not by wealth or privilege, but by a household steeped in curiosity, culture, and contradictions. His father, a senior civil servant with a love for Marxist theory, instilled in him an appetite for ideas and public debate. His mother, a Sanskrit scholar and educator, rooted him in discipline, language, and structure. Together, they cultivated a mind that was both intellectually open and quietly ambitious. But perhaps the most formative force was cricket. The dusty cricket grounds of Hyderabad weren't just sport. They were life lessons in resilience, teamwork, patience, and leadership. Watching ML Jasingha bat with elegance and confidence left a lasting impression. The game's discipline, its rhythm of failure and comeback, became an emotional blueprint for leadership and collaboration later in life. His journey took him from Manipal Institute of Technologido, the cold classrooms of the University of Wisconsin, and eventually to Microsoft in 1992. The transition to America was challenging. New culture, new systems, new expectations. But what remained consistent was his grounding in empathy and learning. A striking moment is when he gives up his U.S. green card so his wife can stay with him, a deeply personal choice that speaks volumes about values over convenience. This chapter doesn't just trace geography, it traces identity formation. The story of a small-town boy becoming a global leader is less about ambition and more about staying rooted in values. Openness to learning, family, humility, and a hunger to grow through service. Takeaway: our origins are not limitations, they are silent strengths. The seeds of leadership often lie in the small acts of empathy and curiosity we learn long before we take on any title. Chapter 2: Learning to Lead, Seeing the Cloud Through Our Windows. Here, the focus shifts to the early years at Microsoft. From a young engineer learning the ropes on the Windows NT team to a rising leader navigating massive shifts in technology and company structure. What stands out is not just technical growth, but personal evolution, marked by moments of deep human learning. One of the most transformative events in his life came with the birth of his son Zane, who had cerebral palsy and required lifelong care. What could have been paralyzing became profoundly enlightening. This experience didn't just make him a better father, it made him a better listener, a better team builder, and a more empathetic leader. He realized that strength wasn't about force, it was about understanding. At Microsoft, he rose through ranks, moving into cloud computing and championing early versions of what would become Azure. But along the way, he noticed something troubling: a culture that prized the loudest voice in the room, a tendency to know it all rather than learn it all. That realization would become central to the transformation ahead. He also shares the personal philosophy that shapes his leadership: to bring clarity, generate energy, and deliver success. These aren't abstract ideas. They were forged in real teams, real conflicts, and real decisions. One learns that leadership is not declared. It's earned by consistently enabling others to succeed. Takeaway: leadership is not about authority or answers. It's about creating clarity in chaos, listening with humility, and helping people become their best selves, even when the future is uncertain. Chapter 3: New Mission, New Momentum. Rediscovering the Soul of Microsoft. The third chapter marks a crucial turning point in the story, both for Microsoft and for its new CEO. It takes us into the heart of a company that, despite its size and legacy, had lost some of its clarity, soul, and creative energy. It was still profitable, still relevant, but inward-looking, siloed, and slow to adapt to a changing tech landscape. And so, on February 4th, 2014, day one of his new role as CEO, the author knew that his job was not to tweak strategies. It was to ignite renewal, beginning with a fundamental question: why does Microsoft exist? The answer came in the form of a new mission statement, a simple but profound sentence that would serve as the company's North Star: to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This wasn't corporate fluff. It was a reset button. It moved Microsoft away from talking about its products and toward thinking about its impact. It wasn't about selling Windows. It was about enabling possibility, whether that was a student in Kenya accessing digital tools for the first time or a small business in Ohio moving to the cloud. But words alone wouldn't change anything. To bring this mission to life, the company had to make bold, visible moves that embodied this new direction. One such move was the acquisition of LinkedIn, a $26 billion bet not just on social networking, but on creating a global economic graph that connected professionals, skills, and opportunity. It was an investment in the empowerment of people, not just data. Another key step was the decision to bring Office to iOS and Android. This might seem normal today, but at the time, it was revolutionary. Microsoft had long protected its ecosystem, treating Windows as sacred ground. But this new mission demanded a change in posture, from defending turf to meeting users where they were. By putting Office on rival platforms, Microsoft showed the world that user empowerment now mattered more than operating system loyalty. The Minecraft acquisition was another symbolic shift. On the surface, it was a quirky purchase, a blocky sandbox game for kids. But beneath that was a vision of learning, creativity, and community. Minecraft had become a global classroom, a platform for digital problem solving and social collaboration. Microsoft didn't just buy a game. It embraced a new generation of creators. Then there was the transformation of Azure, Microsoft's cloud platform. Unlike the Windows era, where everything was about Microsoft's own ecosystem, Azure was built to beepin, welcoming Linux, Java, Python, and a multitude of developer preferences. It reflected the new mantra: earn trust by being useful, not dominant. Internally, the company adopted a live site-first mindset, putting customer experience and real-time feedback above bureaucracy and hierarchy. Engineers weren't building for theoretical scenarios anymore. They were accountable to what was actually happening in the hands of users. This operational shift forced teams to collaborate better, ship faster, and fix problems before they reach scale. Throughout the chapter, we see a recurring pattern: letting go of ego, rediscovering curiosity, and rooting innovation in customer-centric thinking. The author makes it clear that this wasn't just a refresh of business models. It was a spiritual reboot of a company that needed to reconnect with its founding energy, to believe again that it could empower the world, one person at a time. And perhaps the most powerful insight of all, momentum is not built from profits or headlines. It's built when a mission touches people at every level of the organization. When employees begin to see their daily work not as tasks, but as acts of meaning. The shift was slow, imperfect, and still ongoing, but it had begun. Microsoft was no longer just a software company. It was becoming a platform for possibility. Takeaway: true transformation begins with clarity of purpose. Not just what you do, but what you exist. A clear mission, lived through bold choices, can reignite the soul of even the most established organization. Chapter 4: A Cultural Renaissance, from Know-It-Alls to Learn-It-Alls. This chapter dives into one of the boldest changes: company culture. The shift from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all mindset became the cornerstone of Microsoft's revival. He recalls a visit to rural Kenya during the Windows 10 global launch. Inside a solar-powered internet cafe, he met people using technology in transformative ways. Farmers checking crop prices, writers earning a living, students raising their scores. It was a quiet moment of clarity. Empowering people through access was the real goal. At Microsoft, he challenged every employee to find their personal passion and connect it with the company mission. The culture became about individual purpose converging with collective progress. He also shares how neurodiverse employees, like those with autism or dyslexia, were embraced, not excluded. Internal programs like Codapalooza helped surface creative hacks that improved accessibility features, a sign of culture flourishing. Takeaway: culture isn't changed by slogans, but by empowering people to grow, contribute, and connect their personal meaning to a shared mission. Chapter 5: Friends or Frenemies. Build partnerships before you need them. This chapter opens with a surprising scene. The author holds up an iPhone on stage at a Salesforce event. It shocks the crowd, but he uses the moment to make a point. The iPhone is packed with Microsoft apps. In today's world, collaboration and competition must coexist. He describes a major decision early in his tenure: launching Office on iOS and Android. This wasn't just about software. It was about sending a message. Microsoft's priority was user needs, not internal ego. He uses Steve Ballmer's 3CS framework: concepts, capabilities, and culture. A company needs all three to truly innovate, and that includes opening up to partnerships that may once have seemed unthinkable. The Apple partnership to bring Office to iOS was a pivotal example. So was the LinkedIn acquisition. By focusing on shared goals rather than turf wars, Microsoft matured into a more collaborative player. Takeaway: in today's world, smart partnerships, even with former rivals, are the foundation of real innovation and user-centered success. Chapter 6: Beyond the Cloud, the World's Computer. This chapter broadens the lens. Cloud computing isn't just about storing files or running enterprise software. It's about reshaping entire industries. The author explains that Microsoft's vision wasn't just to migrate clients to the cloud, but to enable them to build their own digital capabilities. This is what he calls tech intensity, a phrase that emphasizes helping others become builders, not just buyers. Real examples drive this point home. ThyssenKrupp, the German elevator giant, used Microsoft's Azure IoT suite to monitor over 1 million elevators in real time. With predictive maintenance, they improved safety and cut service downtime. In Japan, after the Fukushima disaster, citizen scientists used Microsoft platforms to crowdsource radiation data collection, proof that tech could enable civic participation at scale. The M-Kopa project in Kenya empowered rural families by giving them solar energy through prepaid mobile plans, and Microsoft helped them digitize and scale that vision. Even the fight against cancer is featured, with a team at Microsoft using machine learning and quantum computing concepts to solve cancer by treating it as an information processing problem. The author reinforces that Microsoft isn't trying to own the world's data. Instead, the company aims to be the world's computer, a trusted platform powering everything from research labs to farms, governments, and classrooms. Takeaway: the future belongs to those who not only use technology, but build it to solve their own local problems. Chapter 7: The Trust Equation, Privacy, Ethics, and Responsibility. Trust, the author writes, is no longer a soft value. It's the bedrock of modern technology. Without it, even the most powerful innovations collapse under scrutiny. This chapter addresses how trust has become central to Microsoft's identity, not just in its products, but in its policies, partnerships, and purpose. At a time when tech giants are under fire for opaque practices and overreach, Microsoft took a decisive stance to embed transparency, ethics, and responsibility at every level. The author recalls one of the most pivotal moments: when Microsoft took the U.S. government to court over a request to access emails stored in an Irish data center. It wasn't just a legal fight. It was about defending the idea that digital privacy crosses borders and must be protected globally. Microsoft stood firm. If you store data in Europe, it should be governed by European laws. This was a defining moment for digital sovereignty. The case made headlines around the world, and it signaled to users and governments alike that Microsoft was willing to stand on principle, even when it was inconvenient. But it wasn't a one-off stance. Microsoft has consistently refused to build backdoor into its software, even for law enforcement or national security reasons. These backdoors, often seen as shortcuts for surveillance, can also be exploited by hackers. To preserve long-term security and user trust, Microsoft took the hard route, strengthening encryption, minimizing data collection, and advocating for user-controlled access. The author discusses how trust is deeply linked with design. It's not enough to say a product is safe. Users must feel safe using it. That's why Microsoft invested heavily in privacy dashboards that let users control what data is collected, where it's stored, and how it's used. In an age where people feel constantly watched, this act of giving power back to users was a meaningful step toward restoring confidence. Interestingly, the chapter also addresses a common myth that younger generations don't care about privacy. The author disagrees. What people want isn't secrecy, it's contextual control. They want to choose what they share, when, and with whom. Tools like Snapchat's disappearing messages weren't an abandonment of privacy, but a creative redefinition of it. Microsoft took that lesson seriously. It began baking context-aware privacy features into Outlook, Office, Windows, and Azure. This chapter's underlying message is clear. Trust isn't a side feature. It's the core product. And in a future where AI and data shape every part of life, from healthcare to hiring decisions, companies will win or lose not based on speed or scale, but on how well they protect and prioritize the human behind the screen. Takeaway: in the digital era, trust is not just a value, it's infrastructure. It must be intentionally built, fiercely protected, and consistently renewed through action. Chapter 8: The Future of Humans and Machines, Augmenting Humanity. In this chapter, the author tackles one of the most pressing and often misunderstood questions of our era. What is the future of humanity in an age of machines that learn, adapt, and even predict our next move? The conversation around artificial intelligence, AI, is frequently dominated by fear of robots taking over jobs, of machines outsmarting humans, of society losing control. But here, the author offers a more grounded and empowering view. AI is not here to replace us. It's here to amplify us. He envisions a world where humans and machines collaborate, where AI becomes an ally in solving problems we couldn't tackle alone. This isn't wishful thinking. It's already happening. The chapter comes alive with inspiring, real-world examples of this collaboration. At the Cleveland Clinic, doctors are using Microsoft HoloLens to perform a kind of digital alchemy. Through augmented reality, they can step inside a 3D holographic model of a patient's heart. They're no longer just reading scans. They're navigating through organs, visualizing procedures before making a single incision. In high-stakes scenarios like heart surgery, this is more than cool tech. It's life-saving precision. Another deeply moving example comes from a blind Microsoft engineer who developed Seeing AI, a mobile app that narrates the world aloud for the visually impaired. With a smartphone camera, the app can describe people's facial expressions, read text from menus and documents, and even identify objects in real time. It turns visual information into spoken insight, making everyday independence a reality for millions. This wasn't a top-down innovation. It came from lived experience, empathy, and a deep desire to use AI for inclusion. Then there's the story of Indian farmers, many of whom face unpredictable monsoons and volatile crop prices. Microsoft worked with agricultural experts to develop AI-driven models that forecast weather patterns, soil conditions, and market trends. Farmers, many using basic mobile phones, began receiving tailored advice on what to plant, when to sow, and where to sell. The result? Higher yields, lower risk, and greater confidence in their livelihoods. These stories point to a profound truth. AI works best not when it replaces human intelligence, but when it extends it. It can help us see what we couldn't see, hear what we couldn't hear, and anticipate what we couldn't predict. But the chapter doesn't shy away from the ethical landmines surrounding AI. With great power comes great responsibility. And in the case of AI, that responsibility begins with the people building it. The author warns that if we aren't careful, biased data can create biased algorithms, perpetuating discrimination at scale. Imagine a hiring algorithm trained only on male applicant data, or a loan approval system shaped by decades of racial inequality. Without diverse teams and inclusive thinking, AI will quietly reinforce the worst of our past. To address this, Microsoft developed and published its AI principles, including fairness, transparency, privacy, inclusiveness, reliability, and accountability. These are not just PR slogans. The company invested in ethics review boards, interdisciplinary research, and training programs to ensure every AI system reflects not just capability, but conscience. The goal is not just smart machines, it's wise machines. The chapter also raises philosophical questions. What happens when a self-driving car must decide whether to save the driver or a pedestrian? These moral dilemmas used to be the domain of philosophers. Now, they're embedded in code. How we design AI today will determine how society behaves tomorrow. In the end, the author reminds us that we have a choice. AI is not a destiny. It's a tool. Its future depends on our intentions. If guided by empathy, inclusivity, and ethical clarity, it can be one of the greatest forces for human flourishing we've ever known. Takeaway: the true power of AI lies not in its intelligence, but in the values we code into it and the humanity we preserve alongside it. Chapter 9: Restoring Economic Growth for Everyone, a Call for Digital Inclusion. The final chapter brings the book's emotional and strategic threads together, anchoring everything in a moral imperative. Who gets to benefit from progress? It asks a crucial question for our time. If the world is becoming smarter, faster, and more connected through technology, why are so many people still being left behind? This isn't a rhetorical concern for the author. He argues that digital transformation cannot be called a success if it deepens inequality. Economic growth that excludes large swaths of society is not sustainable, morally or financially. For the tech industry, the responsibility is not just to invent the future, but to ensure Thadavariana has a pathway into it. He shares powerful stories from around the world. In rural Malawi, Microsoft supported solar-powered microgrids connected to the cloud. These grids brought electricity to villages for the first time. But it wasn't just about light. Each household's energy usage data became a kind of digital credit score, allowing families to access microloans and participate in the formal economy. Electricity became a doorway to dignity, financial inclusion, and long-term stability. In India, Microsoft built cloud tools in native languages that provide small-scale farmers with real-time updates on market prices and weather conditions. The impact? These farmers, many of whom had never used the internet, could now make better planning decisions, avoid middlemen, and earn more. In Colombia and Egypt, Microsoft partnered with local vocational centers to teach cloud skills and AI fundamentals to young adults, connecting them to global freelance markets via platforms like Upwork. But inclusion isn't just about access, it's about reskilling. As AI, automation, and cloud platforms change how work is done, millions of workers will need to adapt or be displaced. The author is clear-eyed about this. Digital disruption can't be stopped, but it can be humanized. Microsoft has invested in partnerships with universities, governments, and nonprofits to build digital literacy programs. These aren't just courses in coding. They include ethics, entrepreneurship, and problem-solving, tools for lifelong adaptability. He also acknowledges that no company can solve this alone. Public policy must catch up. Governments need to invest in universal broadband, STEM education, and affordable computing devices. Regulators and tech companies should work together, not in conflict, to build systems that are fair, inclusive, and future-proof. The private sector, the author argues, cannot remain neutral. It must be ACO architect of the digital society. Ultimately, the chapter circles back to purpose. For Microsoft and for tech leaders everywhere, the challenge is no longer just about innovation. It's about intention. Are we building technology to make life easier for the few or to expand opportunity for the many? Are we using data to target ads or to uplift communities? These aren't technical questions. They're human ones. Takeaway: progress is not truly progress unless it is shared. Technology must lift people up, not leave them behind. The future must be inclusive by design. Conclusion: the refresh that starts within. As the pages of Hit Refresh unfold, a clear message emerges. Transformation is never just about systems, strategies, or code. It begins with people, with leaders who listen, cultures that learn, and missions that uplift. From cricket fields in Hyderabad to boardrooms in Redmond, from AI labs to rural schools, the journey reflects a profound truth. Meaningful progress always starts from within. In an age of artificial intelligence and cloud computing, it's easy to forget the human story behind the screen. But this book reminds us that technology is most powerful when it empowers others. And leadership is most effective when it's rooted in empathy. Hit Refresh isn't just about the future of one company. It's about the future of all of us. And it challenges each reader with a quiet question. Where in your life, your work, or your community is it time to hit refresh? If you found value in this video, a like would mean a lot. It helps more people discover content like this. And if you're someone who loves learning and growing every week, consider subscribing. Thank you.